We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrifice?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are sex people! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hello, Trent. Anyone there? Ah, yes, I forgot. This is a solo intro recording. Trent Elgare is currently in England doing a summer semester for a creative writing course, I believe. Trent, if you're listening, correct me and tell the listeners. But since we don't have him, you're just going to have me telling you what I had to eat most recently. As you may know, we are graduating I am, and friend of the show, Sophia Alexis, is graduating, and she had a grad party. And so I had some strawberry shortcake cake, as well as freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, which were at her party. And let me just say, they tasted good. And what also tastes really good is this episode. So, folks, I want to just cue right into the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week we are talking with Stephen Morrow, sound mixer, for our film today, Babylon, Damien Chazelle's newest film that came out last year, which, spoiler alert, Trent and I really liked. Steven was the sound mixer on this movie. He was super cool. Talked about some really interesting things that happened on set that I didn't know about. Since I don't have Trent here to delay this any longer, I'm just going to cue the intro. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our interview with Stephen Morrow. He's the sound mixer behind such films as Little Miss Sunshine, Ghostbusters Afterlife, Ford v Ferrari, and our film for today, Damien Chazelle's Babylon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So just to start off, what would you say your relationship with film was at a young age?
I think, I think like many people who are, intensely in love with cinema, I started at a young age. My dad, we would always have movie nights, when we were together, we'd watch movies and I think at honestly at 8 years old, here's the short version. My parents got divorced when I was 4. They both got remarried, and my stepdad got a job from Pittsburgh to Los Angeles. So we moved to Los Angeles when I was 8. And we lived in Woodland Hills, and Woodland Hills is kind of the West Valley and the San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles. And they would make TV shows and movies across the street all the time. You could just see the trucks pull up and people get out. And I think as 8 years old, I thought that was it for me. Like, that's what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. I think I want to be a director, but I just want part of that business. So that's where I think that's where I initially just started. Then we moved to Seattle, Washington when I was 11. And at 16, I took a course at Bellevue Community College, which was like a summer camp kind of thing where it was like, filmmakers camp where you would make movies. And, there'd be a group of writers, a group of, every group, it'd all get broken up and we'd just make a movie. And that's when it solidified it for me. I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I want to do.
And so past that, when did you find yourself particularly interested in the sound world?
Right. So, in those community college in Bellevue, it was easy to shoot a movie, but it was difficult to get good sound. And for me, I decided, well, let me figure out how to get the short films that I'm making sound better. Otherwise, they're kind of hard to watch and they're not that great if you can't understand anybody. So I started taking a sound class, And I decided, wow, I kind of like this. I'm good at it. Like I can boom people. I can, record the sound. It'll sound good. And then one of the professors at the community college basically was encouraged everybody to try to get a job on a local movie and call the Washington State Film Hotline. So I called it, and it was craft service, script supervisor, or boom operator. And I thought, well, I think craft service is food. Don't know that I want to do that. Script supervisor, not a clue. That's somebody who hands out the script every day. I don't know what they do. Okay. But boom operator, I've been doing sound for other people's projects, and I think I can do that, So I harassed them for weeks on end to hire me for free and, just give me the chance. And that was my first, on-set sound experience. And from that point forward, the producer of that film would produce a short film or produce a indie or, something in Seattle where they would hire me as the boom person. And, up in Seattle, it was a great hobby. It wasn't a career. You didn't make any money at it. It was more or less you were just doing it for the love of the art. So I ended up, doing a few projects up there, enough where I went, okay, I need to save some money, moved it back to Los Angeles and do it full time. But in the interim, I was doing as many boom jobs as I could, and then I would show up and the mixer wouldn't show up. So then the producer would look at me and say, do you know how to run the gear? And I'd say, oh, yeah, of course, absolutely. And I had no idea how to run the gear. But I had a few hours to figure it out, and so I'd figure it out and, run the gear enough where I started getting comfortable with it and thought, well, if this is what it is, just showing up, I'm going to put my resume in for mixing gigs instead of boom gigs where I'm thrown into the fire every time. And so I started getting mixing work. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to move to LA and do this full time.
Were you 16, throughout all of that, or
so
just at the start?
Yeah. So sorry about that. So yeah, when I first took that summer course, I was 16, and I basically it was like, that's it for me. So I left high school, got GED, which is the
equivalency. Yeah.
Yeah. And took community college classes for the next year and a half. And it was when I got on set for the first day, the professor convinced us all to try to get a job. So I got the job, and I realized, I don't know what an Apple box is. I don't know what a C-stand is. I don't know what any of this equipment is. And I've been going to this college for a year and a half learning film. How do I not know the basic wooden box that's called the Apple box? So that's when I said, okay, this is my last semester in college. I'm out. The only way to learn this is by doing it. They're not teaching you how to do sound on set. They're teaching you how to do sound in a studio and control environment, music. It's different. Like, different aspects of it are different. But yeah. So when I turned 18, that's when I said, okay, I'm out. I'm moving to LA.
Awesome. So sort of jumping ahead to the main film of the day, Babylon, I believe your working relationship with Damien Chazelle started on La La Land. And if you could sort of talk about meeting him for the first time and working on La La Land, which is obviously, kind of a seminal movie.
Yeah, so I there's a producer named Michael Bugh who him and I have worked together a bunch. Little Miss Sunshine, Thank You for Smoking, Up in the Air. I mean, there's a bunch of movies that him and I have done together. And he said, hey, look, I'm there's this musical that we're doing with Damien Chazelle. He's the guy that did Whiplash. And the backstory to Whiplash is that it was produced by Helen Estabrook and Jason Reitman, who found him at a film festival and said, oh, you should make this, movie. And they kind of produced it, and it was a super low budget thing. And I had worked with that group of people. And I think at the time we were doing Labor Day with Jason Reitman in Massachusetts. So they did Whiplash, and so I kind of already knew Damien, knew who he was before, obviously Whiplash came out. But so Michael said, hey, I want you to interview for this movie and see how it goes. And so I went and interviewed, and we talked about La La Land and how we would, record some of it live, some of it to playback, what we can and can't do, and, what his understanding was or what his understanding wasn't. So that was what, sparked our relationship, was that interview. the movie got pushed because originally it was a different cast. It was Miles Teller and Emma Watson. Both of them were busy, and so we had to push the movie. And then long enough went by where they went, well, okay, it'll be Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. So, and then we did the movie. Yeah, and then he did at the same time he was doing what was the
First Man.
Oh yeah, when he was doing First Man in Atlanta, I was doing a movie with Jason Reitman called it's the Hugh Jackman movie. Why can't I remember it? That's terrible, isn't it?
The Front Runner?
The Front Runner, yeah. While he was doing First Man in Atlanta, I was doing Front Runner with Jason Reitman in Atlanta as well. So they went with a different sound person for First Man. And then when Babylon came back around, or not back around, but when Babylon came up, it was, they wanted me to do that. We were shooting it in LA. It was the same Michael Bugh producing. So yeah, so we, that was an easy hire, easy gig to take and say, yeah, let's do that.
So we'll get more into the specifics of this, but just how music-oriented Damien Chazelle's movies tend to be, does that make your job any different or easier or harder?
Yeah, it's incredibly more involved when you have a movie about music, in general, because then sound is no longer just recording the dialogue of the movie, which is already difficult. It's a matter of recording dialogue and making sure the music is right and making sure that you're protecting the dialogue, that you're protecting the music, that you're protecting the vocals. So it becomes a whole, it just becomes a much bigger undertaking, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just to sort of go into that a little bit more, I think in a few interviews with some of the actors, I heard that for a lot of the scenes, there would actually be the music playing on set while they were actually performing. And I was wondering, like, how that affects your ability, to record clean sound and, what if there was a different process attached to that or, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have music on set, the question is there dialogue during this performance? And if the answer is yes, then what you use is an earpiece. It's a little, it looks like a hearing aid. You stick it in everybody's ear. They hear the music playing, but, if you don't have an earpiece or a headset on, you don't hear any music, and then you can record the dialogue clean. But this is, the trick of that is you have to, you're constantly reminding the actors and the director, hey, just remember how loud this scene is going to be in the theater. These guys should not be talking at a normal level. This is a huge party that's ruckus. And if you want it to sound that way, you have to have them, really speak up and talk loud as though that sound is actually happening in this moment. So, yeah, we give everybody earpieces. A good example of that is the battle scene in Babylon, the opening of the movie, where you have 1,000 people coming together on that dirt battlefield, and in the corner you have a full orchestra playing. So normally, the easy way out is just to get out a couple speakers, blast the orchestra so they can play along to the pre-recorded music, and then you just record what you record. And it's basically, in post, they'll kind of just wipe out everything you recorded on set because it's overlapped with all this music. So what we decided to do instead, which was more difficult but worth it, is we gave everybody in the orchestra this earpiece. Everybody had it. And that way the orchestra could hear the music, play along to it, but we could record the effects and the sound of these 1,000 people running in a field live. So there wasn't that bleed over in music, and then you could use it all. Because, it's difficult for post-production to get, 1,000 people running in a field for their library, and then what they'll end up doing is get 10 people running in a field and then do it 100 times, and then there's your 1,000 people, and that's difficult. That's difficult to make it sound real. So we really wanted that opportunity to get that good authentic sound. And then since we were doing it that way, Paramount sent out a couple guys to record sound effects at the same time, post-production guys that would come out and record them running through the field and all the other things at the same time. So it was like a team effort in that sense.
You may have just touched on this a little bit, but when you're doing a big group scene, with 1,000 people, and you need to make it sound like full, and obviously not just get the one mic on the two main characters. Do you have like 5 boom poles running like spread out at strategic locations, or are you are people after the fact like artificially making the rest of the room feel real?
Yeah, so a lot of the time, what we'll do, I mean, basically when you have these big sound effects scenes, you don't want to just have one mic, because sound effects come out of every speaker except for the center channel, right? Center channel is basically the dialogue channel. That's what we're responsible for. But in these moments when you can have really good sound effects, you want, minimum of 2 microphones, maximum of as many as you can put out there. But, these scenes are still large, huge. Nobody's going to wait for sound. We want to give earwigs to 35 orchestra members. We want to, set up everything. So there's still limited time. You're still under pressure. So you get 2 booms out there. We try to do a couple plant mics like deep in the field. We carry with us a 5.1 surround mic. We also carry a quadraphonic mic, which is, Dolby Atmos encoded mic. And then, but, it's one of those things that's not the last thing we put out, but we prioritize the job first, getting the dialogue, getting all the sounds that we can. And then once you have extra time, like if you're sitting there waiting for a lighting or camera, you go, okay, let's grab this mic, put it out there. So that's kind of how it works. You just do as much as you make sure you're covered first, and then you put out everything else. There's ways, like if you look at A Star Is Born, we recorded that. So all the vocals are live, but all the music was recorded in a recording studio. And to make the recording studio sound live, what we did is an impulse response at every venue. So if you remember, like, maybe an old stereo or your current stereo that has like different, a big hall, small hall, church, different EQ effects that make the echo different. The way that you get that is you put out this loud pulse, and with multiple microphones, you're recording it, and with software, it calculates how big that space is and what the echo is and what it should sound like. And so we did that at every venue for A Star Is Born, so that when you would, in post-production, play back the studio recording, you would put it through that filter and make it sound as though it was this big, venue.
Right. Just speaking sort of, I guess, on the form of the movie, there's a lot of like oneers and like 360 sort of setups. And I'm wondering how tough that makes it for you as the sound mixer to sort of have to coordinate that, I guess, or if it doesn't really affect it as much as I think it might.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, when you have these big one shot scenes, everybody's affected. Lighting's affected, cameras affected, where you can put equipment. For the Wallach party, half of that room is a mirror. If you look at it, and it's actually a lobby of a hotel in downtown LA. It's the Ace Hotel lobby, and it's one of those things where everything's affected. So we were up on the second floor of that party. And we would have speakers, we would play speakers in different places because you have a voice of God, which is, the director can get on a microphone and talk to the set. And we would also try to play music in between setups so that the crowd wouldn't get too bored, because, you're doing this party for a week, but it has to feel like it's, 20 minutes of the party. So yeah, it makes it more difficult because, certain things that you would easily be able to boom, you can't. Because they'll whip the camera or spin it around. So, you rely on the technology that you have available to just make these things happen. But yeah, it sometimes you have to do, you have to use a repeater for the earpieces if they're going to go down the hall and around the corner. There's a certain things that you do for each shot.
Right.
Yeah.
So our last sound interview was with the sound mixer of Magnolia, and he said the hardest scene on that was an old man speaking faintly in bed, and it was raining a lot, and he was like moving around. And so do you have a scene that comes to mind in Babylon that was particularly difficult, or that you're particularly proud of after the fact?
Let's see. I mean, it's it's interesting because there's, you know, in every scene, in every movie you do, there is a particular scene you just like, you know, you love doing, or it was like, oh, this was horrendously awful. And we had this, we did have a shot in the movie where it was, let's see, I'm trying to remember how it ended up in the movie. It was a giant oneer that we went from one stage, you know, and he's looking at the bank vault, shoots a gun, you know, and I think and then he ends up in the other stage where he has to go and tell, what's his character's name? Oh, it's terrible. He has to tell him that he's too light and he has to darken his skin. So this scene started outside of one stage at Paramount in Hollywood, went through the stage, back out the back door, down a hallway, back into the next stage, and wrapped around. And at that point, there's, you know, musicians playing on stage. The hard part with that are, you know, sound stages are made to trap RF. They're made so that when the doors are closed, nothing escapes and nothing comes in, so you have a good clean signal. There's a giant Faraday cage. And so when you do from one set to another set to another set, it becomes like just a very hard, difficult range issue with radio mics. You know, radio mics are tiny, low power, you know, they don't have much range. And so to do a shot that's, you know, longer than a football field through sound stages, that's where it becomes like a technical challenge and where you're just pulling your hair out trying to figure out what the best way to do it is. So that scene came through, and then I think when you watch it in the movie, it's cut up. And then you just go, oh, it's not a oneer, you know, because like the oneer is the challenge. So that was probably the most challenging scene for us on that movie. Just on the technical side, because you had to be somewhere close to the stage where the musicians are playing, so you could have the music cued at the right moment. But yeah, that was one of those.
What an interview. And this is just part one, if you couldn't see from the title of the episode that you clicked on. So everybody, make sure to come next week for part two. We go into some more scenes, talk about some other movies he's worked on. It's a good time. And where you can find that episode, along with this episode you're currently listening to, and all of our other episodes, are on any podcasting platform of your choice: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Pandora. We're on everything. And make sure to follow us on our socials, Instagram and Twitter, and leave us a good review on whichever podcasting platform you decide to. Sorry, this is such a short intro, guys, but it's really awkward having to do this with nobody there to talk with. Next week, it'll probably also be me, but maybe I'll have a special guest to talk with me. And hopefully that intro will be way less awkward. Thanks, guys. See you next week.